You raised a $40 million fund in 2003.
I don't know if people know that. Maybe I shouldn't tell.
Tell us. Often described as the grandfather of Scandinavian venture capital, Stefan Lindeberg co-founded Creanda, one of Sweden's first venture capital funds, who raised an inaugural $40 million fund in 2003. This fund went on to back breakout companies like Spotify in its earlier days. Let's talk about Spotify.
Yeah.
I want all the juicy details.
I have this memory of Daniel Ek being quite a shy guy.
They're always the nerds.
And as always, you need to be slightly naive. You need skills and luck. I use the term Tinder teams. Y Combinator, Antler, and other, sometimes matchmaking. So here is a tech guy, here is a business guy, let's make a team. I see more of these Tinder teams break up. I hadn't realized how much gossip there is in the VC industry.
We gossip.
Oh, there's so much gossip. And sometimes I feel like a grumpy old man.
Grandpas are always right.
Yes. Shit. I'm getting old.
I want to welcome you very much, Stefan Lindeberg.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
One of the many reasons why you're called one of the grandfathers of Nordic, Swedish, Scandinavian venture, right?
Besides being old.
Let's not talk about that. In 2003, right?
Yes.
You were one of the co-founders of one of the leading Nordic venture capital funds, Creanda. And for context, right, that was over 20 years ago when venture, especially in this part of the world, was relatively new, right? I have experience with my co-founder trying to start a fund and raising $1 million. Our plan then, we even ended up at 4, but our plan then was to raise $1 million. And this was in the middle of the tech boom. 0 interest rates, and we still suffered, right? That's the story for another day. I flew all the way from Nigeria to Hong Kong for $100,000 check. And the sweet part of the story is I still didn't get it. But we'll talk about that later. You raised a $40 million fund in 2003. Incredible feat at the time, right? But that's easy to see, right? Let's talk about the parts that are not easy to see, right? That $40 million fund, you were backed by 2 major LPs, right? Skandia and the Swiss pension fund.
Yes, the 6th AP fund. Yeah.
Right. And they did, according to my knowledge, 50-50
yes.
in that fund. Even though now you're getting to a place where funds no longer, they want to do just 20% at the max, right? What was it like? And this is the struggle story. People forget that funds are startups.
Yes, I think that's what I've said so many times. We were, to a large degree, a startup in a different industry. And as always, you need to be slightly naive. So if people say it can't be done,
slightly delusional.
Delusional, naive, and you need skills and luck. I mean, another name for luck is timing, maybe, but there's and there were all of them involved in managing to do that. We managed to close that fund in March 2003, and there were elements of all of them, and things ranging from. I mean, I had spent 3 years before as a business angel, so I started making business angel investments in 2000. So I really got my experience from the VC industry, trying to convince them to invest into companies I had already invested in. But in those days, as you said, there were not too many in the Nordics. And I think in those early years of Creanda as well, we knew most of the partners of all of the European funds because there were not that many. I mean, it was, and during those years as a business angel, I that's how I got to know Stefan Helgesson, co-founder, partner of Creanda. And I also got to know Herman Hauser, founder of Amadeus Capital in UK.
Which is also very popular now.
Yes. And so they invested in their first 3 investments in the Nordics were in companies I had invested in as a business angel. So my exposure
What companies were this? Just so
let's see, was Transmode. Oh, but I should remember. Shit, I'm getting old. I should remember the 3. I definitely.
Well, if you remember, bring them back. But
I'll
I remember
bring them.
Transmode. Mm-hmm.
Yes, Transmode was definitely one of them. And so that was my first exposure to the VC industry. And really, the Amadeus part is, yes, it was good to know Herman, who had started a fund like 10 years earlier with one of the first VC funds in Europe, period.
Correct.
So when I didn't understand why LPs reasoned in a certain way, I could call Herman and say, hey, these guys, they want to do this and this. And he said, okay, those things you have to accept. And he told me why. And
those are standard.
And these you can negotiate. So that was really good to have a mentor, somebody you can call. I mean, I didn't call him like every day, but every now and then it was good to have somebody to call. And part of the luck part as well is that Stefan worked for something called Startup Factory, was an early stage investor, not the traditional fund, and they couldn't raise more money. Okay. And we had a kind of a discussion. What would we do if we got the opportunity to start a fund like late 2002 or fall 2002? But we kind of went, nah, it's the wrong time to start a fund. So we had toyed around some ideas on things that we should have done differently. And really the part of the story is that in the late 90s, a lot of investors, even institutional investors like pension funds, they made early stage tech investments.
Interesting.
Yes. So Skandia and the Sixth AP Fund, they had both done that. And they had realized the hard way, i.e. lost money, that a pension fund shouldn't invest in tech startups. So they had on their own decided that investing in early stage tech should be indirect through a fund with people that have experience from business and tech and the real challenges of building a startup. And that's so they were looking for something. And that's part of the puzzle. Part of the solution we didn't need to sell because they were looking for something.
And that's why you call it timing.
Exactly. So they were looking for something, and we convinced them that we had relevant experience we could bring to the table. So that was really part of the luck of combination of skills and timing, and they were looking. And
I see. And I feel like that's an oversimplified version, right? Let's dig into the real version, right? Let's zoom.
I remember one of the questions they asked me. So how come you think you have the experience to handle our money or our pensioners' money?
Correct.
And I said, I've paid dearly with my own money to educate myself as a startup investor. And that was my 3 years as an angel investor because there were some companies that failed.
And you probably had lost a lot of money too.
Yes, I had lost some money in those days. So I said, I paid for my own education. You don't have to pay for my education. Thanks. I remember the guy laughed and said, yeah, that's a good point. You paid for your own education.
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of people hear stories, right? And that's the thing about headlines. Yeah. Right? We had a headline recently that says, We Capital's 53x multiple on Money Point, a company we invested in that became a unicorn, right? Yeah. And I was just thinking to myself and talking to my partner, I was like, there's about to be a couple tens of millions lost because of this headline. Because people would just be like, oh, the next startup that comes, 200K, 1 million. I'm like, a lot of people are going to lose so much money.
Yes.
I said, maybe we should come out and talk about all the investments we've made that failed.
Yes.
Right? Because you actually pay for the education and the right to invest in successful high growth companies with the sweat and blood of failures.
So right. So right you are.
But I guess people don't get it. They look at the glamorous part.
Yeah.
And sometimes they make 2 investments that don't work out and they're like, okay, this is not for me. I'm like, you need a portfolio of like 20.
Agree.
At least.
100%. Right. And you need you need a certain kind of mentality to accept that, like, out of 10 deals, 5 would probably be total write-offs.
Facts.
2 or 3, if you're good, 2 or 3 will give a good return, and 2 or 3 will give some return.
Which is 0 in venture capital fund terms too.
Yes, but it could be good enough for an angel.
Correct.
One of the things that we learned early on, thanks to the kind of LPs we had, typically in a first-time manager, you don't have pension funds and institutional LPs. One of the things that I hadn't really given much thought about before is that really what they expressed is that they rather have long-term relationship with consistent revenues and IRRs than funds that occasionally do a 57x or a 17x.
Correct.
So they rather have certain percentage, a certain margin to public stock exchanges every year in, year out, whether it's good times or good times. So the pension funds, they want consistency and they want relationships and trust. So really talking too much about the $1 billion exit once every now and then,
it's not really for them.
That's not the bet they want to make. They want to bet on a team that consistently over time, good years, bad years, consistently give a return. That's what they're looking for.
And absolutely, especially for guys in like pension funds, this is people's retirements, right? Yes. You're not here to play poker with it, right?
Yes.
You want something that's going to give you diversification,
and
also in probably U.S. terms, something that would outperform the S&P.
Yes,
right.
S&P
do
plus.
That, do that every time.
Yep.
I'll tell you just from my own experience, right? When we started raising our first fund. By the way, we raised $4 million from 40 plus LPs, right? So you can imagine there were a lot of tears and banging on the table. I do remember there were some conversations that I would leave and I would ask myself why I'm doing this. And then there are some conversations I would have and I'll just take myself out for a nice lunch because I'm just like, oh, it's been so tough, especially when you hear a yes.
Yeah.
One of the really emotional times for me was the first time I saw the document. By the way, in our first and second fund, Seth Levine and Brad Feld, partners at Foundry, did invest personally in the fund. And starting my VC career, I was doing a lot of reading, right? Even though I was coming from Silicon Valley Bank, being just in and around, it's different because venture capital is very opaque.
Yes.
Right? And this is why 80% of the value created in this asset class is created by 20% of the players because it's very opaque. It's like, you're in a yoga class and everyone's moving the same, but some people are some people are really getting the pose. And that's why the instructor sometimes tells you, if you're doing it right, you're going to feel it in your calves. Yeah. If you're doing it right, you're going to feel it in your back, right? But they all look the same. And I remember that day I looked at the LPA and I saw on the same page Seth Levine and Brad Feld's signature next to mine. Right? This is a kid that was born in Akure, Ondo State. Not even Lagos. Right? Third world. And then third states inside third world. Right?
Yeah.
And then I had read venture deals back to back like twice to just get a lot of the thinking. And now I'm seeing his signature next to mine. Right? I really think I'm an emotional, stable guy. But I started crying, right?
I mean, you should, because that means you're committed. Your heart and soul is in this.
Right. And I'm like, how did these two worlds collide?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, this is not part of the script. It's not supposed to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I didn't have any time in my, prior to Creanda, I had the idea that I was going to be a venture capitalist. It was
exactly.
never, I was an engineer. I was a computer science guy.
Nerd.
I love tech. And then the opportunity came not out of a 5-year plan, but just, I'm in this situation. We have an opportunity. Let's grab it. And that's kind of me.
And so for me, I'm just curious. And I know that every young entrepreneur or fund manager who's also an entrepreneur, right, is thinking, Are there any moments that stand out for you where you guys had like this fist bump or this beers, they said yes, or the times where I know you must have tried to get more than 2 LPs for that fund.
Exactly.
And then you got the nose and you're really down. Do you have any of those stories that you can share with us?
You're so close to, I mean, what happened when we had closed.
But don't cry on the podcast.
No, I'm not going to cry. But what happened when we had closed in March of 3, when we had closed with the first 2 LPs, we had the opportunity to do a second close. And we spent quite a lot of people over the next 7-8 months and we realized that actually, it is a really, really cold market as an emerging team. And we just decided, no, don't. It wears us down.
Yeah.
We need to prove that the trust we got from the first LP was valid. I mean, warranted.
Correct.
So we decided that what we want to do now is focus on proving that we can do the work. The craft, finding companies, building a pipeline, deal flow, closing deals, handling all of the reporting and everything. And we decided that let's not do the negative things, meet people and say, no, we have enough money to get the show on the road. Let's do deals. So that's what we did. But in some of the early experiences, we kind of went, oh, damn, these LPs, they want reports from us. Some of them were, they were, one of them they had invested in big American VCs, and they were used to that quality of reports, and they wanted us to provide the same level of reporting.
Oh, Lord.
And we went we were so mad over their reporting requirements. But a couple of years later, when we were raising the second fund, the incoming new LPs, they wanted to see our reporting from the first fund, and they went, wow, this is the most impressive reporting we've ever seen from a first-time manager. And then we kind of went, maybe it wasn't that bad that they pushed us.
Yeah, it kind of prepares you, right?
Yeah, it prepared us. So, but what I must say, without their support, I mean, and that's kind of almost like a tough love. They forced us to be professional at the stage where we thought, this is stupid. We've only made one investment. This is stupid.
What do you want me to report about?
Exactly. So the fact that they showed some tough love and showed us how to do it, to be professional fund managers, in retrospect, we really appreciated it.
I think it's crazy because sometimes I get reports from startups. It's just like, hey guys, this is going well. This is not going well. See you next month. And then I have to report to my LPs. I'm the same age as you, same experience as you. And then I have to tell them what's happening in the US first.
Yes.
US macros, right? What are the Feds saying? I have to tell you what's happening in Europe. I have to tell you what's happening in Africa. Macros. I have to tell you what's happening in Nigeria and some other markets, right? Then I have to start telling you how much, who raised, at what time. Then I have to dig into IRRs, MOICs, TVPIs, where I'm thinking. And I'm just like, for the amount of money you're giving me, you're expecting too much intellectual capacity from me.
Yes.
Right? And reporting time.
Exactly the feeling we had. But we realized, in retrospect, it was really a good investment of our time as well.
Absolutely.
Even if, I mean, especially as a nerd, I don't want to do Excel IRR calculations or anything. It's simple for an engineer. Though. It's easier to teach an engineer Excel than to teach a financial guy anything about AI models.
Facts. So, Stefan, let's talk a little bit more about what is happening now, right? There was a particular quote that I saw while, digging into your work life. It says, red sky in the night, sailor's delight. Red sky in the day, sailor take warning.
Red sky in the morning, sailors take warning. So almost got it.
It's close.
It's close.
And it kind of really struck me, right? And after that, it talked about startups and uncertainties, right? And that was kind of a segue into talking about what you do today. I know, apart from your stellar career, just being inside the corporate organizations of venture capital, right? You're doing a lot of work more by yourself today through the Red Dawn Ventures, which you now express through Further Than Capital. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do at Further Than Capital and why there has been that need to, to express by that kind of word further than capital.
Yep. I mean, really, as a bit of a context, I mean, ever since I left the venture capital industry and got back to being my own, I've been more or less professional business angels, and professional in the context, I don't do anything else. I don't have a job. It's not a hobby. It's not an occasional thing I do every now and then. So it's been for at least more than a decade. It's been what I do. I work with early stage tech up. I invest in tech startups. I advise. I try to help them to avoid the traps I've already seen. I help them finding more funding as they grow, and that's really what I do. And the reason for furthering capital is that one of the downsides with being a lone business angel is just that it's a team of one, and a team of one is not a very strong team. And 5 years ago, I made some investments together with my business partner now, Per Björklund. We invested in the same company, and we know each other from 25 years back. He worked for Telia when I worked for Cisco. And then we, without jumping into the VC part of the story, we knew each other from way back. And we both came to that conclusion, maybe we should start working together. So that's when we started Furthering Capital, which is our joint vehicle. And we get involved fairly early in tech startups from a fairly wide perspective as well. But we like to see some innovation, some new way of doing something. I mean, it could be even be a new business model, but we want to see something new, because otherwise what you're just an execution race. We don't like execution races. We don't like cases where it's just a matter of having the most money and the most people, then you're probably going to win. And what we want to bring to the table is our experiences. And I've said so many times to entrepreneurs that the bar we need to pass is making new mistakes. We can't repeat any old mistakes I've seen or done or participated in. So that's the lowest bar, new mistakes. Then, that's the further part. So we provide capital, we help them get started. Sometimes when the first corporate entity is formed, we're part of the ownership and the actual first legal entity, because that's how early we go in sometimes. I'd say typically it's together with other angels in a syndicate of angels. And what's something that's become a lot more common the last couple of years is actually early stage seed VCs that they go in with a bigger ticket and then add a few angels on the top because they've learned that if you have the right angels on board, it makes their job easier as well. And we're lazy. Humans are lazy. So they can handle a bigger portfolio if they have smart angels involved in more of their portfolio companies. So there's some synergy there. So
absolutely. So there's a saying that the final form of a successful VC is an angel, right? You go from a team of 100 to a team of 1.
Yep. So there, it's hard to sum everything up in it, but I'll take excerpts of a few different examples. One very recent one, which is a startup in the AI space. It was really an interesting, the first meeting with one of the founders, we before we even almost had introduced each other, we know each other's name, we have started to dive into how I was running LLMs locally on my portable computer. And we were starting how to run DeepSeek and Stable Fusion and other things on our MacBooks. And without even talking about the startups, that's where we started. So in some cases, it's because I'm enough of a nerd. I have servers at home. I run tons of things. I play with tech. Yes, because I love tech and I want to keep my hands dirty and I want to understand what the team and technical innovation. I want to understand innovation. I want to be able to accurately represent the idea to other people. So that's typical. In another quite recent case, one of the founders, he contacted me and when we had agreed, but it turned out there was a backstory to that, which I didn't know at the time. He told me after Per and I had decided to engage in a company, he told me the story that is living together with a woman, and she had worked for a company, and I had helped that company. I didn't have any, I hadn't invested in that company. I helped them to sort out a situation. And so she said to the guy she lived with, if you're talking to any angel in Sweden or Nordics, you have to talk to Stefan. So that's how he got the email. But he didn't tell me until after we had agreed.
What a smart founder.
so that's back to my karma. I mean, I help people if I can, because I think it'll come back to you. And let's add a third, is that it was a very smart team that some teams of really, really smart people, they think that the hard thing is to create the new product, to create the new technology. And so now we've done the hard thing. Now we just need some business people and some people to build a company.
Yeah.
But this team, they were really, really smart. They said that, okay, we're world class at what we are doing. This is what, and now we need to find people that are world class in other areas. So they reached out in their network. They found a CEO. They made him a co-founder. He had taken a company to the US and he had a relevant experience, and they made him a co-founder because they said, we're good at this. Now we need somebody that's really good at the rest.
Smart.
And then they together say, hey, we need somebody with the experience of fundraising and other stuff. And that's how I got involved. So and I like that attitude. We need smart people in all roles. We need people that contribute without looking after themselves all the time. And so that's different contexts. And I'm still a nerd enough to talk nerdish to
Yeah, I think it's just, it's very interesting how it looks like the longer your career in VC, it looks like your touch becomes more special, right? It's like a Midas touch. It's like, I've seen this movie before, right?
Yes.
It's like, fire that guy, it's going to be trouble. Hire that person, it's going to be trouble.
Yeah.
Don't go there. Don't come here, right? And even for us as a fund, right, we have advisors, and it's almost like they know things ahead of time. For example, there was a fund in the UK that tried to buy 20% of our GP, right? And by this time, we didn't know where the fund was going. We were like 2 or 3 years in. And I did call one of my advisors who'd been investing for maybe 20, 25 years, who was also LP on the fund, and just said, don't take it. And I said, but this is a good deal, right? In quote, they're going to give us a couple $1 million, right, for us to run operations. Yep. They're going to anchor 2 other funds. It looked like a juicy deal. And he was like, don't take it. I know you. I know that fund. Don't take it. I can't explain it to you. In the last few weeks, I'm beginning to hear it again, right? I think I need to send him a thank you note, right? To just say, you know what, you said this, and the reasons you gave were concrete, right? They were right. And so it's just interesting to see how you almost look like you whip a magic wand after all these years just investing, right?
Yeah,
in seeing companies.
Sometimes I feel like a grumpy old man because I go, oh, not again. Now we're going through that cycle, whether it's a hype cycle for a certain technology, or if it's a certain, there's a trend to do something a certain way, or I see funds acting in a certain way, and I go, oh, not again.
Yeah.
I know what's going to happen, but at the same time, I've also grown to be a bit more realistic in my views, meaning that I tell the stories and I tell people what I've learned from certain things that happen, but I really, really want them to not take it as the truth and the truth
Correct.
About everything else, because that wherever you talk about something happening in the 90s when the internet was exploding, whatever, that is a certain situation. Certain things are still true, especially when it comes to people, and certain things are not true. And
Correct.
so I try to be more explicit, let me call it like that. So this is the experience from this time period in a certain environment, and there are lessons to be learned, but it's not a blueprint. And I think that's because I think it's really, really easy when you've been around the block, as I have, it's really easy to think that you know all the solutions to all the problems. And that's also why I think it's really, really good to be two in further, Per and me, because we have slightly different experiences. We can challenge each other. So it'll keep us both.
And grandpas are always right.
Yes.
That's so funny. I feel like the one thing for me where is almost like I want to get into a founder's head is raising at a valuation that's too high for the value of the company at the time. And I keep wanting to say, I don't know if you've seen this movie Get Out, right? It's like sometimes you're shouting at the TV. You're like, don't go in that door. Don't go in that door. And the guy's so sure that he's going to kill whatever is in there. Yeah. He's so sure. He has his gun. He has his axe. He's like, I'm going to kill you. And he's like, the thing in there has killed 20 people. Like, don't go. And that's how I see it for like valuations sometimes. Yes. People build great companies. You've raised $2 million, right? And now there's an acquisition offer to buy that company at 20 million, right? Your investors can go home with 10.
Yep.
You can go home with 10.
Yep.
Right? The problem is you raise that $2 million at 25 million. Now you have a valuable acquisition opportunity that you cannot take because investors are going to lose money, right? And I keep telling people, especially founders, I said, yeah, it's great. It's going to look great on TechCrunch. Like, we all love to be on TechCrunch, but this is not going to pay you in the long run. It might not. It most likely would not, right? But it's like, you tell, and they're like, yeah, that makes sense. And then they call you back the next day and like, yeah, we're sticking to 25 million. And I'm just like,
yeah. And really the worst thing that can happen is that, I mean, since the value of a startup is really a step function. It's not linear, something you can measure. It's
Correct.
It's not a multiple of something.
Correct.
And if you raise money at a very high valuation, and when you burn that money, if you haven't gotten over the next step function and increased the value in your company, if your product is not ready, if you don't have the revenue or whatever the next step is, then you end up in a situation where you have investors that have invested in a high valuation and you haven't delivered what you promised, and
Correct.
you need more money, and the founders are disappointed, the investors are disappointed, maybe you have disappointed customers, and everybody around the table is disappointed, and
Correct.
that's not a good place to negotiate from. So rather be bit more conservative, have some extra time to margin achieving whatever, because shit happens all the time.
Exactly.
So, and I agree. And the problem, though, is that a lot of those valuations are, I mean, like now, some AI companies, there is so much FOMO around them.
Don't get me started.
So, and I'm not going into any details on any of the company, but some valuations I go like, oh, and I know if data, it's going to be quite negative. And if you don't fulfill the promises and you've raised money at a very high valuation.
And I don't know. I guess it's just one of those things where you can never talk people out of it, right? But if you're watching this conversation, I hope I've convinced 2 extra people out of 1,000 founders, right? Raise where you can get bought.
Yes, and it's not the most important parameter in a deal.
Correct.
I did a lecture for students in Stockholm 2 weeks ago. Stockholm University, KTH, Stockholm School of Economics, students from all on just term sheets and closing deals, VC deals. And some of the points were, I mean, the most important point is not the valuation. But
Correct.
That's the point a lot of people get stuck with.
Yeah.
Oh, we closed at 100 million round. Yeah, we're fantastic. But
I guess some things you can never change.
Nope.
I have an important question for you. Just seeing, and this is before we get into the bigger part of your career, right? Just doing VC type deals, right? You spent 20 years plus doing VC type deals. Now you are an angel.
Not really, though, but I'll get back to that.
Right.
Let's see.
What do you think is the big shift in thinking? How do people need to think about economics of investing as an angel against as a VC? What has changed investing from a large institutional bucket and investing like an angel?
Yep. I mean, of course, one of the obvious big differences, the amount of available capital. I mean, that's the obvious. But there are a lot of other differences as well. One is that, I mean, now, of course, we're two, so we have both of us have to be convinced in further. But I mean, you don't have to convince a team. You don't have to prepare a defense for LPs if you fail. I mean, we, the two of us, took the decision and it didn't work out. I mean, we don't have to defend it to anybody else. I mean,
and you have no IC.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, so it's the two of us or investments I made on my own. I mean, I'm the only one to blame. I don't have to explain to somebody else why we lost money. Another thing is that you can invest for different reasons. I can invest in people, or we can invest in people we like. I can, if it's a team I like, it's not $1 billion opportunity. Yeah, it's fine. Let's.
That freedom.
Yes, and I mean, and I was on a panel at Slush 2 years ago talking about exits, and everybody wanted to talk about $1 billion exits, and I said, that's such a small fraction of all exits.
Correct.
The most likely exits, we're talking tens of millions, and for a lot of entrepreneurs, that's an extremely good exit, and it could be it's extremely good for angels as well.
Yep.
You can make a good multiple in your money. And for both parties, if it's the first company for an entrepreneur, they've learned a lot.
Correct.
They got enough money on hand to start their next startup when the lockup is over.
Yep.
And they have no problem attracting more money at attractive valuation for the second startup. And also, as an angel, you can, let's say I find a company that is extremely profitable, but it will never grow above $25 million yearly recurring revenue, but they can give a good dividend every year.
Yeah.
Year in, year out.
Angels love it, VCs don't.
Exactly. so that you get that freedom, and really part of the VC structure is counterintuitive towards the challenges you have as a startup.
Correct.
Because it's a long play. For a lot of startups, it's a long play. And with the fund structure, with investment periods and everything, I mean, I do understand why it is like it is, but I don't have to think it's a good idea for early stage startups. I think actually the optimal structure for really doing early stage pre-seed kind of things in an institutional form, I think you need another structure than the traditional 5+5 or whatever structure you have.
5+5 plus maybe 2.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've talked a lot about, just getting up there as a fund manager, raising the money. Let's talk a little bit more about the meat, right? Which is actually investing. You've made a lot of interesting investments, both as a structured fund manager and as an more individual investor, right? Individual investments like Foot Locker, multi-subscription, companies in AI, more recently Lovable, and also just going back first and talking about also investing as a fund manager. I think I would love to start there, right? Because it's like first in, first out. So just take us through so you had the $40 million now, right? Backed by 2 amazing LPs. What was your investment philosophy? How would you describe it over like 2 minutes? Like, how would you describe what you said? This is what we're going to invest in.
I mean, I would say it's fairly close to what I still do today, early stage tech. I think what we changed a bit from the initial positioning, it was, I would say, our view that it was probably almost only B2B. But in retrospect, I mean, Spotify is a case in point
which we need to talk about.
Yeah, we became more. We realized that the new platforms and the new technologies enabled a new class of business to consumer or business to consumer, and that was not something. I mean, we didn't have that in our O3 plan. Like, we're going to do B2B2C or B2C, and we're going to do no. That would be.
So, what would be like the philosophy.
And I think actually that was one of the points. We had a lot of discussions because at the time in the early 2000s and the late 90s, there were a few themed funds that came around. And I was always of the persuasion that you shouldn't do a themed fund, because if I know the future, which area of technology or business model will be the dominant 5 years from now, then I should go start a company.
Facts.
And so my thesis was always that we should find the people that have those ideas and do those things and enable what will be the great thing 5 years from now. And we shouldn't have a themed fund.
And cover all your bases.
Basically. Exactly. So we should be able to do everything, whether it's infrastructure or technology to support drug development, or whatever. If it's tech, if it's software, hardware, we wanted to be more agnostic than a lot of funds that were trending, that were doing mobile. There were mobile funds back in those days. There were internet infrastructure funds, and my view was always, if we can foresee, I mean, since the fund is 12 years long, I mean, I have to be able to theme that right. I need to know how to make money 5 to 10 years from now, and I won't. Then I should, if I do, I should start a company doing that. So that was part of our thesis, not to be too narrow.
And let's talk a little bit about what the founders kind of looked and felt like. And I'll tell you, for me, right?
Yeah.
I feel like the founders in our portfolio, and it's become a common theme, right? They don't look like the regular founders that you read out of a Silicon Valley newspaper, right? Went to MIT, went to Stanford, worked at IBM, and then they're leaving, they found something, and then they're raising this big round, $20 million round, went to YC, went to Techstars. We don't care about any of that, right? And the founders have also kind of, it's almost like a DNA identity kind of thing, right? I do remember the company who just became a unicorn, MoneyPoint, doing over $250 million in revenue. I do remember trying to pitch it to another VC. And the first question this VC asked me is, oh, so where did he go to school? And it was at that moment I knew this is not the investor for him, right? So what else? The thesis part I find very interesting. Because now all you see is, climate fund, AI fund, fintech, blah, 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 right? And I find that thought very interesting. But outside that, what else do you think we could pick out as recurring themes in the kind of companies you did back at Creanda?
It's a good question. I think, as you said, a lot of things were different. I mean, there were no global incubators, there were no YC or 500 startups.
Crazy.
Or so, and I would say most of the entrepreneurs we met had some kind of professional experience. So they've been working either with a bigger company or a mid-sized company in a certain topic with a certain field.
So operators.
Yes. So, and they had identified a market need or a business opportunity or a technology innovation that their current circumstances didn't allow them to pursue.
So you didn't back the 18-year-old who dropped out of Harvard?
It wasn't that common. I don't think we saw anybody like that. There were some academic, quite young people coming out of academic environments with research and no business.
Oh, no. So, by the way, now it's almost like if you walk around and say, oh, I dropped out of school to pursue this, it's almost like, now give me your money. It's very common now.
Yes.
And so sometimes before a founder tells you, this is what my business is about, this is what I'm trying to achieve, just first principles. You hear, oh yeah, second year out at MIT. And I'm like, then what?
Then what? Yes,
right?
Yes.
So it's just interesting to hear that you went for operators. And maybe also because you guys were operators.
Yes.
And you had that network.
Yes. And I mean, even now, I still... a young, inexperienced team can make it, and they can even create billion-dollar companies. But I think that actually, honestly, it's the exception. I think that you're more likely to build something really big and valuable if you're on your third venture. to be honest.
I totally agree.
Yeah, and I like people that have experience in organizing things. And you could be running the local Boy Scout or the group at university organizing parties, like I did, of course. But not. I mean, if you organize something, if you work with people, because that's so. I would say generally, from when I started my professional career to now, I'd say my view on how important the people are, I mean, it's orders of magnitude higher, and the team, which is a consequence of the individuals. And I've seen things I don't really think are optimal, like Y Combinator, Antler, and other sometimes matchmaking environments where you match and build teams. So here is a tech guy, here is a business guy, let's make a team, and off you go. And I must say, over the last couple of years, I've seen more teams like that break up and have problems.
Absolutely.
So I spoke at an event, startup event last fall, and I used the term Tinder teams. that I see.
That's a good one.
I see more of these Tinder teams break up than I do with teams that have
especially if it's not going well.
Exactly, because they don't have the history of handling pressure together.
Yeah.
And so I like teams that know each other. I mean, you don't have to be best friends in primary school, but you have some track record. If you've been through some challenges together, because it is a roller coaster. It will go up and down, and you need to be able to support each other going through that. And so.
No, absolutely. And there's something, we have a rubric we use to kind of like gauge teams in-house and train analysts. And 2 of the 4 things is how long have these guys known each other? And do they have a shared value, right? You see people come together, oh, my dad died of cancer. His auntie died of cancer. We came together to find a cancer, to do cancer research, right? We see teams like that really bonding over a common goal, different from now my new word, Tinder teams.
Yes,
right. And
you can have a few hot dates, but
right. And I think it's usually a recurring theme. Well, people who used to work in the same organization, they liked each other so much they left to go start something together. Right?
And they had a shared vision from
exactly. And you know that the team has risks, but that is not one of your big risks, right? That if you left these guys, even without your funding, they would do something together.
Yes.
They're friends, right? Like my co-founder and I, Francesco, we were classmates in business school, right? I was going to start an e-commerce business, right? That's a story for another day. I had to go and take a course in photography so I could take pictures of my models. Yeah. But he was like, sure, I'll build it with you, right? And then after that, we tried to start a company that allowed neighbors in New York and Boston to share their Wi-Fi signal, right? And pay on the app. We did that together too, right? He ended up with a cease and desist. But so that's another day.
Doing things together was more important than,
absolutely.
Okay, let's do this together and try. I mean,
right. And he's a part of We Capital that is like, it's so foundational, right?
Yeah.
And
I can imagine.
Yeah. So it's, and I get it, right? If anything is going to break up that team, it's not going to be us. In fact, that's the last thing on the list. So that does make a lot of sense in terms of the thesis. I feel like a lot of people look more at like competencies, which are important.
Yes. I mean, that's also part of the team, evaluating the team.
Correct.
But formal and informal competences. And sometimes I mean, I can challenge people because I want to see how people react. So if I ask a stupid question, so how do you react? If I ask a really stupid question,
they just go, that was a stupid question. No money for you.
Or, I mean, are they good? Their way, let's say they're solving a problem in a new way. And are they good at explaining to me why this way is better? So I could ask I might ask some stupid questions. I really understand the answer, but I'll ask the stupid questions to see if they have a good way of explaining and teaching and putting things in context, because that's what you have to do with customers, with investors.
Correct.
I mean, in your head, the idea is crystal clear.
Correct.
But if you can't communicate it, if you can't put it in context, it'll stay in your brain.
Yeah, that's why I guess that's why people say the term "explain to me like a 5-year-old."
Yes, exactly.
Like, I'm not a 5-year-old, but explain to me like a 5-year-old. Yeah, I think it's.
I don't know why my brain jumped to another idea. I had a lot of discussions on a topic with one company, what they were doing, and then eventually I ended up investing in the company. And one of the founders said, "We've known for several months now that you would invest." And I said, "So how would you know that? How could you know that?" Stefan, you started saying "we." When we talked about the challenges and what we were going to do to build a company, you went from saying, "What are you going to do?" to "What are we going to do?" So how are we going to address that market? How are we going to... So I subconsciously, I had...
You were part of the company.
Started talking.
Your checkbook just had to follow.
Exactly. So they said, so I just laughed and say, "Oh, we know that. We've known that a long time."
You're like, you find out what else.
Yeah, and I kind of love that because that, but it also, I think, give you some kind of a picture of me because I want to be we.
Correct.
I want to be part of the team when we are negotiating with Creanda today or some other fund to get money. I'm we with the team, and that's what I want to be.
Nice. Let's talk a little bit more about investments. Let's talk about Spotify.
Yeah.
I want all the juicy details.
Oh,
this was in 2008, right?
We met them the first time in 06, I think, late 06.
Jesus Christ.
Or early 07.
Jesus Christ. I'm just thinking about how old I was, but let's not talk about it.
And I mean, Spotify was such a different animal in those days. And I mean, web only. And the name Spotify comes from the fact that they expected to have 90% of their revenue from commercial spots between the songs. That was the whole business idea.
The Pandora adverts.
Yes, it was
the freemium.
Yes, so that's the name, spot, commercial spot. That's the name in Spotify.
Oh.
To Spotify the music, to commercial, to adify the music, to put ads in the music.
Talk about pivots.
Yes. And for us, as I said, consumer apps, we were business guys. We came from a business to business environment, so we had some concerns about that. We also had some concerns about licensing rights.
Yeah.
So
this is what operators think about.
Yes,
they're like, how are you going to stay in the right side of the law? Yeah. How are you going to? Yeah.
Then a couple of things happened. iTunes had launched. I mean, you had iPod and iTunes,
Correct.
And iTunes was at the time by far the biggest legal digital music platform. And I had a meeting with a VP at Sony Music, and just to do due diligence when we were kind of, and we were really spending a lot of time trying to convince ourselves, should we even look at this?
Correct.
And then they were very bullish about the valuation as well, but that's another side story. The first part was really, is this even, can you do this? Yeah. And I remember a discussion I had. I went to a music conference, because people were talking about digital music and downloading and illegal downloading and stuff. And I had a meeting with this VP at Sony Music, and I asked him, please explain to me, why would you allow something like Spotify to happen?
Correct.
And he said, very simple.
We don't allow.
No. He said, very simple. Today, iTunes is more than 80% of all legal digital music. That means they have the power. And we think that in the future, more of the consumption will be digital. We don't like one party with 80% of the market. We want competitors to iTunes.
Yeah, we need to break it up.
So we're going to make sure that 4 or 5 competitors to iTunes materialize. And Spotify could be one of them. And for me, that was the turning point in my head, because now I understood why Spotify could actually happen.
And I guess he was saying things that you were hearing, but he didn't know you were saying. Or he didn't know he was saying. Oh. So it's like, first of all, you now realize this is a big deal for even guys at Sony.
Yes.
So on a macro, we need to look at this space. Is it going to be Spotify? We're not sure. But on the macro, we need to watch this space.
Something will happen in this space. Exactly. That was the message he gave.
So tell us, how did you meet the founders? If you remember, what was the first meeting like?
Oh, I have this memory of Daniel Ek being quite a shy guy.
They're always the nerds.
Yeah, compared to Daniel Ek, I mean,
right now.
Yeah, and only like 5-6 years later, I mean, I just love to see people grow like he has. So, and he was more of the quiet nerd. But they had a vision, which it was clear that they had a vision that was bigger than just building a tech platform. He was also so committed to creating a great user experience. Even the first, you can argue whether the content in the first Spotify web app was legal or not, but that's even the first web app was so well designed, and it worked, and they managed to this. Even in those days, they started the next song directly. They had a smart way of caching. I nerded down into how they handle. You distribute the first 5 seconds of every song somewhere, and then you can easily get the first 5 seconds going, and then you sort out where to find the rest of the song. I mean, they had lots of smart things why they had done things there. So they were nerdy. They had a vision. One of the reasons it took a long time to close the deal was their expectation.
I was about to ask that. Go on.
They had a very high expectation valuation, and in the end, as everybody knows, we ended up doing the deal together with Northzone, and we managed to negotiate we agreed on a lower valuation than,
So you guys did what founders hate.
Yes.
VCs coming together and
yes, but for several reasons. One, at that time, Northzone had just opened in Stockholm, or 3, I think, when we had started. So they were originally a Norwegian fund, and they expanded and became a Nordic, and we grew from Stockholm and Nordic. So we were kind of, Northzone and Creanda was back then. We were, in most good deals, we were either competing or working together. And if the capital needs of the company was big, which it was in this case, it made sense for all parties that we shared the deal.
Yeah.
So we could commit more money, and we could, as you said, but we did what founders probably hate.
That's why when founders, who else are you talking to? They don't want to say it because they know that person, and you're going to pick up the phone.
Yeah.
You know what? Let's club together and make this deal happen. But
yes.
Now we lead, not you.
But there's that was one of the things I hadn't really realized how much gossip there is in the VC industry.
We gossip.
There's so much gossip, and you can either win or lose through the gossip.
True.
As a company, as entrepreneurs.
Facts.
And we've closed the deal in one AI company, which is not public yet. But now at Tech Arena, yes.
Tell us.
So another VC that's not part of the deal came and congratulated me and said, "Hey, I heard you closed the deal in company XYZ." So, but he had heard it through the grapevine, of course.
Yeah. As we're almost out of time, and I wanted to wrap up with something that was different. Let's talk a little bit more about your personal portfolio now through Further Than Capital.
Yep.
Right. You've invested in a few very interesting AI startups.
Yep.
It looks like Grandpa still has a few tricks in his sleeves. And, amazing investment in Foot Locker.
Yep.
Who I'm a customer of.
Yep.
Right. Tell me a little bit more about those investments and what you're doing in the AI space.
Yes. What I like in the AI space, I want to see, for example, let me start with something I don't like. That's somebody taking a model which they don't control or own or can influence.
LLMs, basically.
Yes. And then they take data which is publicly available or it's not unique to them, and then they build a service on top of that. And you serve a certain vertical. You can name any vertical, whether it's legal or... Because then whoever wins is the one with the most money.
Correct.
Yes, it turns into an execution race, and I don't like that. I want to see companies that have their own data, that have their own model, that have done something different. So you have an edge, you have a moat, you have a unfair advantage. And for example, one of our current portfolio companies in QSL, they're totally different. In QSL, they're totally different. Part of the founders are neurology researchers, and I can talk for hours.
Nerd like you.
They're nerds. So, and what I love is that they're neurology researcher nerds and IT machine learning AI nerds, and we put it all together, and and it's so exciting because it's something totally different. Another company called Motorica, they're using their own model, but it's based on traditional large language models, but they have their own data.
So what you don't like? Oh, plus their own data. Okay.
They have their own data, which is really, really important. And so I want to see something that's not just a copy of other things.
So it's interesting because I invest primarily in Africa, right? Continent with endless possibilities, right? But let's start with where we are today. Where we are today is there isn't one of the top 100 universities in terms of machine learning, data science, or AI on the continent, right? So foundational models, the US and probably has won the arms race for that, right? And this is just talking about, verticalized AI.
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm talking about it is because I feel like some parts of the world, right, just for lack of talent or being able to afford the talent that's coming from there, are forced to just do that.
Yeah, and I think there's another aspect as well, is that the data the model are trained on are US and Western to a very large degree.
Correct.
Which means that people say that the model are biased, but I don't agree. I think I think the machine learning prediction models are the opposite of biased, but the data is biased. So, and then naturally, I mean, the models are neutral, but if you only give them part of the data, because not data about everything is available, then they can't know. So I think I think that's an opportunity as well, because what I'm afraid of is now we're seeing more and more AI-generated data used to train AI. And what I personally think is going to happen is a kind of a regression to the mean, the normal distribution model. And if you start to train AI on AI, then the curve will be more and more narrow. And we get to a point where there is one truth.
Where it's almost like a homogeneous set.
Yeah, exactly. And I really, really, really hate that.
Makes sense. You're spoken like a real nerd. And I do agree with you to a large extent. I think we're still in the places where we're just trying to get by with the capabilities and the benefits of AI, that we're going to take a step back after a while and just be like, is this good for everyone?
I think there are two very important aspects. I mean, any startup today should use AI. No matter what you're doing, you should use AI to be more efficient on what you're doing. So you don't have to be an AI company, but no matter what you do today, you can use AI to be more efficient, to be faster, to handle processes better, to do everything from human resource things to interactions, or analyze the damn shareholders agreement the VC sent to you. You can do a lot of things using AI, and you should do that. So I think we're going to see a lot of startups for whom AI is a tool. I solve a specific problem I've identified in a geography or in a vertical or in a certain business area, whatever, and I use AI to solve that. But I'm not an AI company.
Interesting. I want to thank you a lot. Really enjoyed the conversation, and see you next time.